Hello and welcome to this video, playthrough guide of the Warriors of Chaos. Today I'll be playing as Prince Sigvald the Magnificent.
I'll move, I suppose.
And I will be showing you how I play, sort of priorities, all that kind of stuff, which will hopefully make your Warriors of Chaos campaign fun and easy before Warhammer 3 is released. So Warriors of Chaos, I wouldn't say they're the hardest campaign ever, but they're definitely one of the campaigns that snowballs very, very quickly.
I'd rather be raiding, but you have my time.
And so you do really need a really strong start. So I did this campaign a couple of times before I managed to sort of get something going that I like. And I found Prince Sigvald to be the best choice when it came to your starting lord. Now, and that's not to say the others are bad, although I think Kolek's pretty bad in general. Archaon is definitely a good pick as well. It's just, I feel like Archaon is good regardless of what stage you're at in the campaign, whereas Prince Sigvald is really good in the early game. So what I like to prioritize in this particular campaign is horde growth. For turn 1, which I hope people watching, for turn 1, I like to prioritize horde growth and building units. So I'm not too worried about talents. I can get it this turn, which is nice. I obviously can't get it to level 2 since I awaken them, but awakening them is definitely the best choice. So overall, for the first, say, 15-20 turns, or just in general when you're playing Prince Sigvald, you don't really care about growth. For my talents, I will be going along the blue line, and I will be choosing growth. But that's mainly for Lightning Strike, and because obviously Lightning Strike, you can isolate armies, and you can kill a lot more things at once, especially if you're attacking. But at the same time, if they've got 3 small armies, you can pick off those first 2 armies, and then attack the actual threatening one, and make 4 or 5k extra gold than you would otherwise. So that's the main reason I choose Lightning Strike, but obviously it's really useful for taking down settlements, for you know, really strong factions such as the Empire and Brettonia. But this turn 3 is a key turn. When Prince Sigvald settles here, they will always sally out, and so that's why you want to be focusing on recruiting troops over your technologies, because your technology is quite expensive. And you can see their army's not very strong at all, but sometimes they have a bigger army than that. I'm not really sure why, but it really depends. So if you are comfortable dealing with that army with a smaller army, then getting the technology is probably better, but I'll just say that they sometimes do have a bigger army than that. So I didn't finish them off, which is good, because you want to get the extra post-loot battle from this. And there's only 2 units, they're on half health, and as you can see, I get about 1,500, 2,000 resources from that, which is really good. I mean, Chaos have some of the best post-loot battle, especially in the early game of any faction. So, as you can see, I went for growth, I had 2 points, and that's really just because there's no other good points there. You have reduction in siege holdout, you have reduction in recruitment cost. Really not that valuable for Chaos. You don't want to be waiting a turn at sieges if you can help it. And recruitment cost, I mean, if you lose an army this early on, you probably just lost the campaign. And so that's just my thinking there. Now, if you're lucky, you'll be able to get some heroes early on, but it's really random. I mean, I'd like to say I hope the developers make a sort of event where you're guaranteed a hero or a sorcerer, especially for Sigvald since he has no magic. But, you know, then it's Warhammer 3 is coming out, it's Chaos focused. So it's not going to happen, but it's not necessary. It's not necessarily. One of the campaigns I did get a sorcerer and the other hero, aspirant, as well, which was really good and made the campaign a lot easier. So I'd say coming up to the dwarves, coming up to this minor dwarven faction, this is probably the hardest point of your campaign. Your army doesn't really have a huge amount of armor piercing, and since this is very hard battle difficulty, your chosen aren't going to perform they'll perform decently, but they're not going to like carry you. They're not going to get hundreds and hundreds of kills.
Always ready for a headbutting contest. Always ready. Yes.
So whilst one of the advantages of having vassals is that you can make a lot of money from them if you want to. I always forget to do that, but it definitely would add 1,000, 2,000 gold every handful of turns if you wanted it. So from playing this game, I know that they often have 2 half stacks at this point, the Minor Dwarven faction, and Clan Moulder is definitely heading south, and they really do want to take these guys out as well. So you can take advantage of that, and I think I did in this campaign, but there was a campaign where they didn't do anything, and I had to fight them on my own. You can't really take more than 1 and a bit stacks at once at this point in the campaign without a sorceress, or a sorcerer. So you just got to be careful of that. You can just force march past them and start getting onto the Norskins. They'll most likely get taken out by your vassals and Clan Moulder anyway. But if you can fight them, you should, because they will give a lot of gold. And that's really important for this point of the campaign. So as you can see, about 1 and a bit stacks, so I was reasonably confident here that I could win. Well, not an easy battle. I would definitely... You've got to really micromanage your archers, your skirmishers well, since they can't 1v1 the archers, so you've got to be playing pretty aggressively towards them whilst... and they don't skirmish either, the Dwarven archers, since they know they can beat you, so you've just got to be quite careful with that and really gang up on them. Your Chaos Warriors and Chosen are very important here, as well as Sigvald. Sigvald's... he is a very good lord. He's very good, not because I think he's one of the strongest in the game, but where he starts, he performs very well, and that's how I judge a lord. So I'm choosing between... so I choose recruitment reduction, but it's just the best of the 3. I'm not going to go down any more of them. I just want to be getting on with that blue line. So I managed to take them out, which was really good. And as you can see, Clan Moulder are like, thank you very much for the free ruin. And Clan Moulder are your biggest ally here. Just like Norska, make sure you get a non-aggression pact or something with them, because they, compared to before, when they weren't very good, they really help give you time, especially against Kislev and the Empire.
Moving.
So you want to be getting into encamp stance or as much as possible, mainly for the replenishment, but also you need to build buildings. So I'm getting up to tier 3, and the whole point of this campaign is that I take advantage of the 60% upkeep reduction for marauders that Sigvald gives to his army, and so by the end of this, I'm hoping to have almost full stack with the artillery and Sigvald and a sorcerer of Marauder champions. And with those Marauder champions, I find that they completely crush the Norskins. The Norskins can't do anything about a full stack of Marauder champions, whereas if you just made normal Marauders or Berserkers, they just melt. Like, you just can't rely on them at all. And it's free upkeep, so you'll be able to get about 2k gold every turn as Chaos with a full stack, and it's just so useful. It's really powerful in the early game, and it can be used till the late game, to be honest. I mean, you got to be careful which factions you choose to fight, but it is a very powerful army, and I've found it very useful in all my Chaos campaigns. So I'm just letting my my troops heal up. They're only going to build a couple of units, whereas I'm going to heal all my units, so I think it's worth it, and I'm going to create 3 more. So after you have taken out this Dwarven faction, you want to be heading over to Wintertooth. You want to be confederating them. I used to aim to confederate to awaken at the major settlements, but I find just awakening wherever is important. Just rushing through this first bit is the most important thing. You want to be getting through Norska by about turn 20, which I think I do in this video, and you want to be heading down to Corone and dealing with Lewin Leon Kerr and all his forces before they get too strong. And I'd say they get too strong about turn 70, turn 80, when they confederate Paravon and they start making the Hippogriff Knights. You can beat with the a full stack of Marauder champions if you know how to skirmish well. You can beat anything up to about the Royal Hippogriff Knights and the Royal Pegasus Knights. They just they're too strong, they're too fast, it's just very difficult. They're really good against any of your flying lords as well. So as you can see, I get an agreement, get some gold. Always try and do that. Remember, get gold from your vassals if you can. I'm not doing that, but if you are less comfortable, then it definitely is useful. I just auto-resolved. That was a bit of a risk, but it paid off. Now, maybe Clan Moulder would attack you. I've never had them do that to me, and it's the start of the campaign, so I just took that risk. You got to take a few risks with the Warriors of Chaos. So I was definitely at this point weighing up between the Unholy Communion and upgrading my barracks, or the Marauder building. And I chose to upgrade it because I had enough money. I had 16k gold, so I'd still have 6k left over and I'd be able to upgrade it. Once you get a tier 3 building with a tier 3 Marauder barracks, you have 100% upkeep on all your Marauders, so you're not paying anything for your army. So this is when you want to transition to a full Marauder army, because just having that 1.5, 2k gold resource trickle coming in is really, really valuable. And you don't really notice it, but it does help a lot. It sort of takes off that stress of having to sack settlements constantly, and is the main advantage you get over all the other lords.
Ready. Now.
Also, I like to go for post-loot battle when I'm not upgrading the main line or the top with the growth. Post-load battle, the sacking of the settlement bonus is definitely something else I like to prioritize, but since you're going around Noska just awakening the tribes, you're not really sacking settlements that much. I only really sacked the first couple just because I really need the gold at the start. You're just awakening them, so it's worth just doing the post-load battle. And you will find a lot of land battles when you go through Noska, since they all have a couple of stacks and they're pretty aggressive. Another advantage of skirmish cavalry in general is that the AI tends to underestimate it. The power balance isn't very good, so that means you're going to have to fight a lot, but it also means that they'll charge you when they shouldn't.
Bring ruin. Bring ruin. Witness my beauty. Witness my beauty.
And the great thing I think about this guide is that I don't need to talk about heroes, because Chaos don't really have many heroes. In terms of traits, though, Knowledgeable is probably the best. The +5 melee attack trait is also pretty good. That's probably the second best in my opinion. But I don't worry about it too much. I just get a hero, put them in the army as quickly as possible, get them to Immortal before they end up dying. Because they will die. They will die. You're going to get into a lot of sticky situations with Chaos, and it is very hard to remember that you have a sorcerer when you've got 3 armies coming at you. So in general, when I'm going through Noska, I used to try and awaken every single Norscan I could and get as many allies as I could. Long story short, they're going to betray you at some point. It won't be for a while, but it's not worth your time doing it. Just get the allies you can get, and beat the non-awakened Norscans and vassalize them as well. Once they're beaten, doesn't matter if you beat them or not, you can vassalize them. And yeah, they're going to betray you, but they shouldn't betray you before Corone, before you take out the Empire or Corone. once you've taken them out, you know, you're not fighting the same people all the time necessarily, and eventually they'll be like, nah. But they should be able to help you finish off the Empire and the Brettonians before then. Or you'll have hopefully have about half a dozen stacks by that point, and if they do, you'll be able to deal with it.
You dare. Now. Are you a god? Are you a god?
So the important thing for Sigvald is you want to get him to tier 4, so you can unlock Kolek by making the Shaggoth building.
The Dark Prince wishes.
That's really your only priority. You don't really care. You got 0 upkeep on pretty much all your troops. When you can afford to upgrade it, you will want to transition away at some point, but I found this army to be really effective, even in the late game, so it's not really too important. I would definitely prioritize getting a sorcerer first before worrying about upgrading. But sometimes they do an event, they give you a free one. So the vassal kind of just cleaned it up for me. I would have preferred if he hadn't, because then I could have got a bit more money and a bit more XP, but that's fine. This kind of stuff happens.
Avert your eyes.
The gods direct me. Witness my
Dominance.
despoil.
So now I think an important part
The
of
gods direct me.
any Chaos campaign
Witness my
for me is this next bit. So I don't really know what I call this, but I'd say it's the corridor of vassals. So this area of Norska has the highest amount of... You can vassalize about 3 or 4? No, 4, yeah, you can... Well, if you didn't vassalize Winterpire, which I did, you could vassalize 4 Norscan tribes in this small area in the middle of Norska, which is really valuable. Also, you do see a lot of lords from just the generic Norscan factions, and you can beat them and vassalize them as well. I don't really notice too much of a difference between a normal vassalized and an awakened vassalized. I've had both betray me, which is unfortunate. But since I beat Throg, and that was Wintertooth, I can make them my vassals and make sure I get all the diplomatic treaties with them and get the max amount of money, because if they've got it, they'll give everything to you when they're beaten. And that goes with pretty much every Norscan faction. Some of them don't want a peace treaty, but they'll let you vassalize them even if they don't want a peace treaty from you initially. So as I said before, I used to just like really move all over and try and get as many awakened tribes as I can and make sure they're in the major settlements, but it took till about turn 40 or 50, and that's if one of the other tribes didn't start killing them all off and confederating them, which was kind of a waste of time, I think, overall, if that happened. So I've got 3 vassals. It's turn... It's really early on. It's turn... What turn is it? Turn 15, and it's looking good. It's looking good.
Who are these grotesqueries?
I'll move, I suppose. My adoring hordes agree.
Are you a god?
So you always want to watch your growth, just make sure you're upgrading your settlement, and you really just want to rush across this part of the map. There's really not much the Norskans can do to you. They struggle, since it's Norska, to build, even on Legendary, to build more than a couple of stacks, and you can beat 2 stacks at once with this army. I wouldn't recommend doing it. You'd have to be, you do need to know how to skirmish, but you can pretty comfortably beat it. I mean, obviously there are some army comps, say lots of skin wolves or something like that, where it'd be kind of annoying, or quite a few quite a lot of cavalry, but that doesn't really happen with Norska. They really like to make a lot of marauders.
Bring ruin. I am Slanesh's scion. You dare.
Ready. A beautiful decision. Invade.
So I can awaken here, which is a really good settlement to awaken, because it's a major settlement, so it actually makes them quite a bit stronger. Not really strong enough to worry too much about, but that's a freebie. It is worth noting that if you vassalized, let's say, Wintertooth or something, and they have one of the settlements that make up this region, you can't awaken the sort of native Norscan tribe, because you've already got a vassal there, and the system thinks, oh, you've already got a vassal, you don't need to awaken. So that's just something to think about. You can't really change it. I will say that if you go through this area and you do this kind of strategy, it's not always going to be the exact same. Sometimes, you know, if you're really, and I would recommend doing this, just rushing through, you are going to miss, like, say, the Varg, and the chances are they might kill the Wintertooth. So in this campaign they didn't, which was good for me, but it doesn't matter too much. You can just sort of wait for their faction leader and kill them off. It definitely will slow you down, so that's just something to think about. But overall, the campaign is still pretty manageable. So I got it to tier 4, and I'm sort of acutely aware that I want to be building the... I've got some gold, I'm getting the income, just because it's this start, and I'm going to build the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth building, so I can recruit Kolek, and I'm also sacrificing all the units I capture from battles, so I can get Archaon as well. And you want, as early as possible, as early as you can. Sometimes it's not possible really, really early on, but to make sure you've got Kolek and you've got Archaon just sitting in Norska, not really doing anything, and getting that growth.
Straight to business. Where shall we raid?
And that's really valuable, because for me, late game armies, if I do a full campaign, just consist of Shaggoths. The Chaos, I mean, you've got other monstrous units, but when you get to about 1070, 1080, Chosen, Chariots, Chaos Knights, they just don't perform very well, and you've got 2, 3, 4 stacks coming at you, and you just can't afford to have those units in your army. So yeah, Wintertooth confederated the Varg, so I didn't have to worry about anything there. I didn't really care about not having the Varg as vassals because I didn't notice a huge performance difference between, say, seven vassals to 5. It just they're just there and they help you out. You're really taking the brunt of all the fights anyway. They'll definitely finish factions off for you and do a really good job of taking land if there's no armies defending it, but they're a bit slow otherwise.
I've little time for talk.
So unfortunately, I wanted to take the plains here, but they were confederated by the Wintertooth. If I'd managed to get there, I could have got an extra vassal. Not the end of the world, but it's fine. Another advantage for Sigvold, as I said, I think earlier in the video, is the diplomacy. So if you're playing Archaon, there's a chance that a lot of the Norscan tribes, especially like Wulfric, will declare war on you compared to Sigvold, where they don't really do that when you're playing Sigvold. And so it kind of just gives you a bit more freedom. If you're lucky, you know, Wulfric will appear and you can kill him off, vassalize the World Walkers, and it just makes it quite a bit easier, and it gives you a bit more consistency, which you really need.
Are you a god?
I'm not sure why I didn't. I think I made a mistake here. I should have encamped and made the Shaggoth building, but I decided not to. Well, I didn't decide not to. I just didn't think about it and clicked. But that's something to consider. You do want to be getting the Shaggoth building. You want to be getting your extra lords with the growth. You don't really have to worry about money. So it's always worth doing. Now I encamped here. I could have taken it because I was like hoping that maybe the faction leader, sorry, would come, and I could awaken that particular area, as well as beating the faction leader and vassalizing the Hellspire tribe. That didn't work out, but it doesn't really make too much of a difference. And I'm also always checking to see if the faction has been beaten. Pretty unlikely, because if they were beaten, they were probably beaten by a Norscan tribe, and that would mean they'd be confederated. But it can happen. Wulfric definitely likes to head south towards Brettonia, and he can often sometimes lose that battle, sometimes he wins it. I think this campaign, I'm not exactly sure what happened with Corone, but they got beaten, which made the campaign a lot easier and allowed me to push the Empire and finish them off about turn 40 something, which is really good. But most of the time that's not going to happen. You're going to have to verse Corone, and I would definitely go for Corone first. They're far more of a threat than the Empire in the late game to you. So these vassals seceded. I'm not really sure why. It was a bit random, but they let me vassalize them straight away. It's a bit of extra money. I didn't make any money because they weren't that happy with me, but it didn't really make a difference. I just re-vassalized them, and they weren't a problem after that, but I'm not really sure why they did that. They didn't declare war on me, so that was good. So in previous campaigns, I think Chaos was a bit harder because Kislev didn't really have any challenges around them, and then no one was really taking out the Northern Empire quite as aggressively. I think since you have to focus more on Kislev.
Despoilers come. Ready.
But it's still pretty hard. I think it definitely feels like Corone and the Empire are a little bit more aggressive towards you since Clan Moulder is in the picture now than it was previously. I think it took a while for both Corone and, well, especially the Empire to come up north, but in my last campaign they were here by about turn 30 or late 20s, and they'd taken a couple of settlements in the south of Norska, and they were pushing up, and they really wanted to kill me off compared to killing off Wulfric, which is usually the case when you're playing Legendary.
My adoring horde.
Your corpse would be a
So yeah, just checking to see if they were beaten. They weren't beaten.
your bedtime rival. My warhounds are eaten in days.
Who are these grotesque rears?
Your corpse would be a worthy offering for the... A timely arrival. My warhounds haven't eaten in days.
For chaos.
So I got lucky here. The faction leader of the Hellspire tribe force marched out to attack an army, and I was in range, so I just went over there. I don't know why they made this kind of mistake, but they aren't that smart all the time. And I just killed him. I don't think, and don't hold me to this, because I might have had a vassal, that you can't awaken anyone from the Bornling Gathering. Not 100% sure, but as you can see, couldn't get a peace treaty, but I could get a make them a vassal, which is pretty much the same thing. But you just got to be careful if you're new to the game and you say, oh, they're not going to take a peace treaty. You just have to click that and go into to become vassal, and they'll still take it. So I vassalized them. It's just Wulfric, and I kind of hesitated here because I didn't know where his army was. I didn't want him to be behind me and then taking out all my vassals. I wanted to know where Wulfric was so I could just go and finish him off.
Never stop.
And I've got Kolek up there nice and safe. Since once you sort of commit Sigvald to attacking the Empire and stuff, it's very hard to make a Lord. I did end up making Archaon when I was down south. If you're lucky, you can have the required number of sacrifices, which is 10, before you leave Norsca, and then you can just have both Lords in a safe spot, hiding, getting growth, and building up for Shaggoth spam or Giant spam or whatever you want. You could even make a full army of Chosen or something if you wanted, but I wouldn't recommend that. Not on very hard battle difficulty. You would struggle immensely against anything, really. And I found that it was very hard to make just a normal Lord. I usually make Chaos Sorcerers Lords. I don't know if that's their exact name, but they're better than Chaos Lords. They're not as strong, they're a little bit weak, but once they get on a dragon, which is, it's taking a risk, it definitely is taking a risk, they're pretty strong. They'll perform pretty well, and they've got magic, and you are limited with how many
Bring my mirror sheet.
sorcerers you can have as Chaos, since I think it's 2 per army, which isn't great. Or it could be 1. I'm having a moment. But yeah, it's limited. It's limited. You can't make 50, 60, 70.
Now. A beautiful decision. Are you a god? Tribesman.
I was a bit worried about declaring war when Throg was that weak. If Wulfric was over there, and I didn't know where he was at this point. I couldn't see him in any of the settlements that I'd looked at. And I couldn't see him... and I hadn't seen him on any of the vision I had, which is, quite a lot of vision. And so I thought he was down at Karun, or he was sort of hidden on the right side towards Throg. But when I didn't realize this, but if I'd seen World Walkers declare war on Musalon, that probably means that he's down south, because why else would he do that? Now, one thing I will say about just diplomacy in general when I was playing Chaos, Marienburg didn't readily declare war on you. It was very safe to be around Marienburg, and I don't know why. To be fair, I never had my army so weak and so close to them that it might be a problem, but at the same time, they weren't really uniting against me like I expected them to.
Fool. A worthy choice. The masters obviously want to dominance. The masters obviously want to see me kill you.
Yeah, and then this is when I realized that Paravon had Corone. Now I think what happened is Wulfric took out Corone,
The masters
which
obviously want to
I probably should have noticed before, but I was quite surprised. It does happen, I don't know how. But the auto resolve is pretty good. But anyway, so Corone was taken out. Normally, once I've sort of got out of Norska, I'd head straight for Corone to stop them, to kill them off before they started confederating. Especially once they got to Paravon. Artois is not too bad since it's right next door, and you can just it's just in a couple of extra settlements. But
You dare. But God is all. Never.
yeah, they were finished off. Paravon had already taken Corone. I could ignore that, and that's what I did. Now, I don't think I'll be showing that part of the video where I take out the Empire pretty soon afterwards, but since I think, you know, there's just so much variety, it's hard to make you can't really call it a guide or anything like that once you get past Norska, because every campaign's going to vary pretty drastically. But I think this is just me trying to work out where they are. As you can see, I have mostly Marauder Horse Masters, but the other Marauders I have are mainly for the armor piercing. I don't like to make a lot of them because they don't have much ammunition, and in the early and mid game, most of what you're versing doesn't have high armor, and it's not something that... And the extra ammunition kind of just evens it out. You're kind of just relying on not getting chased down and killed. But I do like to have a little bit of armor piercing just for the Lords and any single entities. It's a lot more effective against it. So then the World Walkers declared war on Cathig, and I should have realized that they were down south. I kind of made that assumption. You're in a bit of a rush when you get through here. The quicker you get to Corone, to the Empire, the better it'll be.
Your corpse would be a worthy offering for the gods.
By turn 30, turn 40, the Brettonians will start making some cavalry, but they're not going to really have a huge amount of Grail Knights. Sorry, 20 or 30. They're not going to have a huge amount of Grail Knights or Hippogriff Knights or Pegasus Knights. But the Empire will have a lot of greatswords, and they'll just have the normal pistoliers and crossbowmen as well. And maybe some Hellstorm Racketeers. It's pretty rare, but sometimes they do. They definitely have mortars. But it really is the Empire armies are very manageable one-on-one for Horsemasters. It's really when they get Demigriff Knights, but that's definitely not till later in the campaign. So I just attacked them, I awakened it. I didn't think their army was there at this point. And as you can see from this image, I've got a lot of vassals, and I'm in a really good spot. It's just Nordland that are kind of causing problems, but they're very weak. And my vassals will take out the rest of the World Walker settlements, which is a problem since their only settlement will be not in Norska.
I can't.
And that makes them quite vulnerable to dying off, but I can't really control them anyway, so it's not that big of a deal.
For chaos. The spoilers come.
But I think that's nearing the end of this sort of run-through of Chaos. I hope that helps if you were struggling with Chaos. I hope it makes it a little bit more interesting if you despised Chaos. And let me know if you'd like to see... I purposely did cut out the battles because it would just take way too long. And this video is kind of long enough without that. For all of that. So if you want to see a couple of battles, I could do some analysis of just skirmishing in general, which might be useful to some newer players. I do find it very effective for a handful of factions. And if you want to see the second part of this video, it won't really be a guide, it'll just be my playthrough of finishing off Altdorf, and let me know in the comments.
The gods direct me.
But to end this video, I'm going to be heading down south. As I said, I wanted to go... Normally I just take out Cologne, get down there as fast as possible. It's probably the most difficult part in terms of... apart from maybe the dwarven faction at the start, in terms of finishing them off. Obviously, this army's not very good at sieging. It's not bad, though. You really are relying on them sallying out or having a lord nearby so you can make that engagement. But you can also attack the settlements. It's definitely... This army isn't useless, you just have to be a little bit careful. So I finally got a sorcerer as well at this point. Not too happy about that because it was a metal sorcerer. Much prefer shadow or fire. Even death is probably a little bit better as well. But it is what it is. And I can always delete it if I want, but I'll keep it in here for now because it is pretty good. The Law of Metals are quite good with a lot of skirmishes because you get the extra armor piercing from the passive, and you can reduce armor and all that kind of stuff.
Moving, Father. Bring ruin.
A negotiation. How about
Dominance. Moving, Father.
So this is a bit of a risk going out on the water. You kind of have to take it at some point. And this army's pretty strong. There wouldn't be a huge amount that I'd lose too readily. Especially from the Empire. But my expectation was that I'd head down there and the World Walkers would head up and I'd meet Wulfric, and then I'd sort of finish off this part of the campaign and I'd be in a very, very good position to start taking on the Autotide. And I'll just let that play out. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next video.
Avert your eyes. Handsome and lethal. Move. No. Bring ruin. Ready. You dare. Refused. Despoil and ravage. Win.
The truth!
Unworkable.
You dare? God of Mountains!
A negotiation. How about this? I let you talk, then we do.
Witness my beauty.